If you've been following along, you know that I'm in the market for an upgrade for my X-H1. And naturally, I'm considering the X-H2 and X-H2s. I recently put out a pretty in-depth comparison between the two, if you're interested. But my main purpose for this camera is really just video and really great autofocus. I think one of those will definitely fill the need, but what about the X-T5? In this video, I'm going to lightly break down my findings with the X-T5 and do a bit of light comparison between the X-H2 and 2S. Fujifilm was awesome enough to send me this X-T5 for a few weeks, and I have a bunch of thoughts. Jumping into the specs, I'm not going to read off the specs like a spec sheet, but the X-T5 is pretty similar to the X-H2. They both have the same 40 megapixel sensor, which is a big jump in resolution compared to the X-H1 and a big jump compared to the X-H2s. I'm going to throw up the rest of the specs on the screen now so you can take a look at that. And I think one of the biggest comparison points would be the price, with the X-H2 being $2,000 and the X-T5 being $1,600. So I would save a bit if I did go in this direction. To jump into the main thing here, these top dials, the shutter and the ISO. To be honest with you, I've been noodling around with this idea of making a video how Fujifilm has kind of lost their soul, lost their way from their roots, and that's mainly because the GFX 100S no longer has these dedicated dials. They're stripping away a lot of the tactile features, and also the X-H2, X-H2s, again, same thing, remove the dials. So I thought that those were pretty core things that made a camera a Fujifilm, you know, aside from things like the look and the LUT and all of that. This camera is proof that Fujifilm is listening to its users. Fujifilm basically reverted back to the X-T3, skipped the X-T4 and upgraded the X-T3 so that this is the version we're at now. And this is truly a great camera to use. Other notable features include the drive mode, which is right under the ISO. So there is a switch here, and that basically just allows you to change the drive. You definitely need to take a look at this. You can't just do it by feel unless you know the clicks, but it's super easy to do it. And the newer cameras, you have to press a button and cycle through. With this, you just simply take it away from your eye and change it to burst with 2 clicks and go right back to doing what you're doing. It's really quick, and it's really nice that this camera has it. I miss it on the GFX and also miss it on the X-H cameras. And another feature, again, a switch that was kind of removed, is this focus mode. It's still on the GFX, but they removed it from the X-H2 and 2S. And it's really nice to just be able to be shooting, say you're in manual, and then you just want to switch to continuous, and you can just do it without even looking at it. Just move your finger, click, you know the middle position, or if you don't, you could just simply go all the way and move back. It's pretty easy, and again, it's just a speed thing. I really love this feature, and I'm pretty disappointed that they replaced this with a toggle button, just a simple button that you have to cycle through on the new X-H cameras. Maybe my favorite thing about this camera is the screen. This is the old school screen. It was on the old X-T cameras, it's on the X-H1, it's on the GFX, it's not on the X-T4, that had the flippy screen, and the new X-H cameras have that flippy screen. And I'm gonna be honest, I hate the flippy screen for photography. It's not great. I think that anyone who loves it is lying to themselves. I'm sorry, Fuji, being blunt here, but truly don't like it. I think with this, it's more of a photo-esque screen, and it's very easy for you to compose a shot, a nice landscape shot. I think with the flippy screen, it's really nice for vertical shots, but this screen does vertical as well. So I think ultimately, Fuji, if you're listening, just take a look at Sony, make a screen that flips out as well as flips up while in this position, not flipping up when it's out here. I think it's weird to look offset and, you know, focus on where your lens is shooting when your screen is not aligned with your lens. It's kind of weird. I think there's a lot of great in this camera, and I understand that this is kind of like the callback. They're bringing back what they took away, and I completely understand that. But I would have loved to see a bit of a hybrid. So, for example, a couple features in the new X-H cameras that I think are really great is the grip. I'm not a fan of the X-T line with their grip, so that's just me. I understand that if you go X-T, you're not getting the grip. I understand that there are extenders, but nevertheless, I'm not a big fan of this grip. That's just me personally. I think that also the X-H cameras have these amazing eyelets that you can connect your straps to. They're just integrated into the body. I know that this is integrated as well, but it's basically a slot that is integrated. So it is super sturdy, super easy to do, easy to insert your Peak Design anchors or however you attach your camera straps. That is a solid feature that I could have seen being really nicely integrated here, but there's just so many dials at the top, you just can't squeeze them in. And naturally, being a GFX user, being an X-H1 user, I love that top screen. I understand, again, that's an X-H line thing or GFX thing. That's something that I do gravitate towards. I really love seeing your battery information, your SD card information. Hey, speaking of SD cards, this camera has 2 SD card slots. So if you're not a fan of the new X-H cameras having 1 SD card slot and 1 CF Express slot, I would have rather had 2 CF Express slots so you can use the same media. But hey, you know, that was a weird decision in my opinion, or maybe a combo slot would have been better. I believe Sony has combo slots. But yeah, this camera, 2 SD card slots, which I think is pretty cool. Anyway, I digress. I think there's a lot of good about this camera. I think that in terms of the overall build, I think they could have injected some newer features as well while keeping the nice switches and easy to use things. And one last point I will say, I'm a conflicted person. So I said that I missed the dials at the top. I've kind of changed my stance on that. I think they're great, but they're slow. And I think that after using the GFX for quite some time, even using the new X-H2, X-H2s, you know, it's just much quicker to change with a quick swipe of the thumb or pointer finger versus, you know, having it to your face. You can just change it very easily versus, you know, going like this or going like this. Kind of changed my stance. I don't love them anymore. I'm sorry guys, this is a breakup. Another really refreshing thing about this camera is the size and weight. This is truly a small camera and it's really nice to carry around, especially when paired with a small lens like the new XF 30mm macro. Super nice combo, really light, great for street, great to bring it around pretty much anywhere you want to go. The X-T5 weighs about 560 grams and the new X-H cameras, they weigh 660 grams. So that 100 grams does make a bit of a difference. Just to talk about shutter sound real quick, and this is a point that probably doesn't apply to everyone, but if you need your camera to be pretty quiet in different environments, this camera I would say has a pretty loud shutter. I'd say it's pretty close, but I would say that this camera has a louder shutter than the X-H2. I don't have them both at the same time, so I can't compare, but you just listen to a comparison, and I'm pretty sure the X-T5 has this little like thing at the end that makes it a little bit louder. Not a big deal to me, but this will be pretty loud when you're bursting. And just to talk about megapixels, so I did a pretty deep dive on this in my comparison video between the X-H2 and X-H2s, and the X-T5 does have the same 40 megapixel sensors. I'm not gonna heavily go into this in this video, but I do love this 40 megapixel sensor, especially compared to the X-H1 and other 23 megapixel sensors. I did upgrade to the GFX 100s because the 23 megapixels, it just was not cutting it for me. So that's kind of my stance. There are plenty of photographers that I see taking pictures with the X-H2 and other 23 megapixel cameras, and obviously they can be phenomenal. So it's just kind of what you want, if you want croppability or not. So the X-T5 is almost identical in video specs to the X-H2. The main difference being that the X-H2 does 8K and this X-T5, it caps out at 6.2K. To be honest, it's not a big deal. It really depends if you need that high-end 8K output. I personally don't, so to me, it doesn't really matter. But either way, both these cameras are a pretty big step up in terms of video, especially with bitrate. These cameras just shoot substantially higher quality than say the X-H1. So most of my use with this X-T5 really was with the XF 30mm macro. So I wasn't really photographing super fast bugs and tracking them. It was mainly macro use and some street photography, so I wasn't shooting fast moving subjects, but this camera has pretty much the same new autofocus system that the X-H2 has, and it's really nice. When you have wide tracking on and you're tracking either subjects with eye detection or birds, dogs, they have trains, cars, it's really nice. And it basically has this like really jittery, hyper aggressive focus system that unless you're shooting really fast moving things like dogs sprinting, all out sprinting, or motorcycles, really fast moving things, this camera will definitely get you by and then some. The autofocus is really nice. The video AF is also really nice. This video I am recording with the GFX with the 50mm, so just take that into account. It's not the autofocus of the new X-T5. Again, I'm pushing the other video of a different camera, but I did a pretty deep dive on the autofocus with the X-H2 and X-H2s. I'll link that video below, and also I'll just keep popping it in this video. That will give you kind of what to expect with the X-H2. But again, ultimately, if you're shooting normal paced objects or slower objects, you will be greatly impressed with the autofocus. I don't think you could go wrong with this camera. So in closing, I think that this is a really great camera. And I think that if you are solely a photographer, this is definitely the way to go. I think there are a lot of awesome features on the X-H cameras that are missing from this camera, but I think a lot of them are really kind of preference as well. Me, I love the grip and the top screen. You may not like that. So I think as a photographer, this is definitely the camera for you. You can even get a grip add-on, but these dials, I like them. I think they're cool. I love the drive switch. I love this focus switch. And it sounds kind of silly to be like, oh, I really love these switches, but when you're using something on a daily basis, weekly basis, and it just makes things really much quicker, it makes for a much better experience. And I think that's what Fuji really kind of dug deep. They went back to their roots and they succeeded. If you are a hybrid shooter, you do video and photo, I think what you want to do is you want to go to B&H, go to a store and kind of check out both. I think it comes down to one thing, the screen. Everything else is kind of like preference based, but I think you should really take a look at the screen and you should see if you can deal with that flippy screen. And yeah, I'm not gonna go ramble on about the flippy screen again, but if you can get past that flippy screen, I think the X-H2 is a phenomenal camera for photo and video. It's just that flippy screen, if you don't like it, it will potentially break your experience. So that being said, what are your thoughts on the X-T5? Do you own one? Did you pick an X-T5 over an X-H camera? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to discuss with you on this one. Like I mentioned before, I am making the choice between the X-H2 and the X-T5 and maybe the X-H2s, we'll see. And I didn't make that choice yet. So I would love to have a discussion with you. Let's talk below. And with that being said, check out one of these videos over here. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, share the video. There's affiliate links as well if you want to purchase this camera. With that being said, catch you in the next video.